Hi, everyone. Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis here from Legal Help Center. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up, because we have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. You can find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth.
Thanks, Vernon. You heard it, folks. If you've been injured, call and find out how much you qualify for. Call 800-497-4410. Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled you can be with us today. We are going to be talking with Mary Jo Belmont, who's going to be sharing her own dementia journey as she cared for her husband. Before I introduce you to Mary Jo, I just want to give a shout out to our two companies, Alzheimer Speaks and Dementia Map. On Alzheimer Speaks, you will find a ton of curated resources that we have for you under our free educational resource section. And on our sister company, Dementia Map, you will find resources from around the world. And if you're not listed in there, we would love to have you join us. So just reach out to me at Lori at Alzheimer Speaks, and I will step you through that. And if you're looking for resources, we've got like 150 categories that you can search. We're growing this organically because we want people that are actually going to respond to you. So with no further ado, let's hear about Mary Jo and Jack's journey with dementia and find out how their journey can help you. So, Mary Jo, we've been talking for a while, and we finally got this show scheduled, and I'm really thrilled to have you on. I know you have worked with Linda Burns from Florida on her show, and I highly respect her. And so why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Mary Jo?
Okay, well, I grew up on a dairy farm in Texas, and I went to school there and met my husband. And then when we married, we were in the Army for a while. Then we drove truck together for 3.5 years, and we settled in Western New York and started a trucking business. And then we had one also in Washington. And then I was a teacher, so I taught school for about 32 years. And my husband, we'd been married for about 50 years, and when he passed away from dementia, and he had 3 different kinds. He had Lewy body and vascular dementia and Alzheimer's, and was diagnosed at the Mayo Clinic in Florida. And I had written journals along the way. I've always journaled since I was young, and I just decided to take those journals and put them into a book, and I thought it would help other people that were on the same path or a similar path, and I wrote it to try to help the caregivers and also to educate people about dementia, because so many people don't really know what it is and don't understand the term. So that's what I did, and I self-published on Amazon, and then my books can also be at any bookstore or library that is supplied by Ingram. So that's where my books are. And so that's kind of what happened to me.
Okay. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper. Now, your husband's name was Jack, and
Right.
and he's the one you're referring to that you wrote the journals about. Were there other people in your, circle of friends or family that had dealt with dementia prior to Jack, or even after?
In his family, he had a first cousin that was in a memory care, and he talked to her before the dementia, and then he was very, concerned about her when he realized he did have it too. And but I had talked to her sister and to her children a little bit about it, and my daughters were a big help to me, but they didn't go as deeply into it as I did as far as reading books. And I went to the most important thing I did was get in a support group. And like you mentioned, Linda Burns, she was major in helping me in a support group. And then she has a website, and you probably are familiar with that, where she not only lists her support group that she worked with, but also other support groups that you could contact with over Zoom, because it was during COVID. So Zoom was the way, and it continues to be a lot of the way of people communicating now. And I was in more than just hers. I was also in Debbie Savage's and a few of the other people. But that was how I got my help, was through the support groups.
Yeah, they are so important. There's something called the Memory Cafe directory too, which used to be a universal directory, and now it's just for the U.S. But if you go to memorycafe.com, some of those are in person, some of those are virtual. I know the one I do turned virtual over COVID, and they decided to stay virtual, which really surprised me. But I think people had progressed, and then they found out the connections were still good and solid over Zoom. A lot of people don't think that they're going to get those deep connections, but they still exist over Zoom. And it just became easier, especially if they didn't know if somebody was going to be ready, or maybe they were just having a tired day, that the care partner could still engage with them. So there's a lot of various support groups out there. And, one of the problems I found, my mom lived with dementia for 30 years, was there wasn't a good way to connect with all the resources that are out there. And so that's one of the reasons we started Dementia Map, was to try to help people find some of those resources as well. I wanted to ask you about your journaling. So did you hear somebody tell you to maybe start journaling, that it would help you process things, or was that something you've always done? Some people just have journals and write in them. How did you get started journaling?
Well, actually, I started journaling or writing in a diary when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
And then I just continued, and I found that as I got older, it was more like a therapy for me. And then when I got into the support groups from dementia, they all mentioned that writing it down, whether you kept it or not, some people would write and then they would like burn their journal because, you're going through such a traumatic and emotional thing. They didn't want to keep any of that information, but it just helped to write it physically down or to type it on the computer, and then they would just destroy it. But I always felt like I have a strong faith, and so it was sort of like I was praying on paper that I could write it down, and that helped me process, not only while he was going through dementia, but it also helped me process my grief as I was doing that. And it was very important when I went to the doctor, because then I had a journal of when certain things happened and a timeline. And that's something that was helpful, in doing that. And when I went to write my book, then I wrote it in diary form where I had the dates. And so I know when I was reading books on different people's experiences, and everyone's is different, so no one's is the same. But at the same time, I was wondering, well, what was the time? What was the timeline on this? And many times the books didn't have a timeline, and I wanted to have that in my book. So journaling, I have tons of journals. Some of them are not just about my everyday life, but about, my grandkids and my children and my trucking years. My next book that I want to write is on my husband and I's travels when we were driving truck together back in the 70s. And I kept a journal then, so I'm sort of writing it from that too. But
Okay.
yeah, I've always journaled.
I remember being little too, and even my granddaughters now, when they have their journals, they have a little teeny key, and no one can get
Yes.
into the journals. And it's nice to be able to have that private sector to air the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you want to share it, you can, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Like you said, some people destroy theirs, but it is a good way to process and just release it from the body. There's statistics out there, that talk so heavily about a lot of times the caregivers get ill and many times pass before the person they're caring for because they bottle that stuff up, and all of a sudden it turns to illness when you don't release it.
I even read, through some of my research and whatever, I was reading how they had done some experiments, and that crying, the tears that you cry from from your pain and your grief and things like that is different from the tears that you do from cutting up onions, or, being hurt, like scratched or a broken bone or something. And they have a different chemical in them that actually heals the body when you cry. So, they were always saying that crying was good because it was able to get that out, like you said, and then those tears actually had something that helped your body. So
yeah, I'm one that believes in feeling your feelings and not stuffing them. I know when I was younger, I think I was taught to stuff them more.
Oh, yeah.
But I think people don't always understand if we don't show our true authentic selves of what it's really like, and then we get mad at them for not understanding when we really haven't been honest. So often it's so easy to say, oh, it's okay, I got it handled, we're doing fine, and then you get in your car and you just want to scream, like, why did I say that?
Right.
I'm not feeling in control. I'm not feeling okay. But, we are kind of taught to put on that persona that
I know
everything in the bag.
So many times in my support groups, they would remind us to say, when people say, is there anything I can do to help? Have a list. Make a list of all the different things. If it's just nothing but your neighbor will take your garbage cans out to the road for you and bring them back to your house. And, little things that people can do for you that will just make your life easier. And people do want to help, but they don't know how. So make a list of things that people can do for you. It doesn't have to be anything big. And let people help you, because like you said, so many times you would just want to say, oh, I'm fine, I can take care of it, I can handle it.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Yeah, I have a neighbor next door, and little things like, we help take out the trash, but in the winter, her getting the paper that doesn't get delivered to the door, it just kind of gets thrown a little ways up the driveway, is really hazardous for her. Yeah. And so the grandkids run over and will, bring that up. And that just alleviates a slip or a fall and that scariness. And I think sometimes when we worry about something, we can almost perpetuate it happening as well. Could be bringing your mail up. It could be coming over and letting the dogs out, or watching somebody while you go grocery shopping, or maybe to coffee or a movie with friends, and just being able to have that break, or going to the gym, or whatever somebody wants to do, or taking a nap. Sometimes you just want sleep, but you don't feel like you can, because somebody might need you, and so then you kind of sleep with one ear half cocked, and everything wakes you up, so you don't really rest. I know I've done that before, and I'm like, why did I even try? It's like I might as well been up getting something done, because I don't feel well rested, and I feel sometimes more frustrated.
We really need to go for help. And I know I was able to convince my husband about going to a psychologist. Mm-hmm. And our insurance paid for the psychologist. And so I found one where I could go to one lady and he could go to another man in the same office. So mm-hmm. It gave me an hour break where I knew he was being taken care of. Plus he was able to talk to someone, and he would tell me, oh, he is my best friend now. He goes, I just love coming here. And so he loved going there, and it helped him process some things, in his dementia, because he knew he had memory problems, and then he knew he was getting worse, and he trusted this guy. Mm-hmm. And so even at the point where he had to have his driver's license, they turned him in to have his driver's license taken away. It takes forever. From the time they first the doctors reported that he had to have his license, removed, because he would not give them up, because he was determined he was capable of driving. They sent a letter and said, oh, you've been reported that, you're unsafe to drive, but you have a whole month or 2 months. It was a month or 6 weeks or something. It was a large amount of time. I was really surprised at the Department of Motor Vehicles. I mean, if doctor says this person has dementia, you wouldn't want that person driving, if it's a certified doctor. Anyway, they said that he had the choice of getting another doctor to give a reevaluation, and they could they wouldn't take away his license. So he got his psychologist. And so, of course, I told him, I said, you have to give him all the information. So he said, oh, yeah, sure. He goes, I want him to see that these people just don't know what they're talking about. And so he gave permission for him to talk to all the people at Mayo and whatever. And so then he had to explain to Jack that, he had to also say that he shouldn't drive. And Jack said, that's okay, because I know I could really drive. But the only reason you're having to say this is because you don't want to get in trouble with it. It would hurt your profession, because you have to agree with the other doctors, because it would hurt your profession. So I totally understand why you can't tell me that I can't drive. And so it was, he didn't even get mad at him. But, then we turned that in, and I thought that's the end of it. And all this was in my book. Then we got another letter, and he said, I don't even want to see it. I know what it is. Well, I opened it, and I found out that they give you another month or 6 weeks to get an attorney to object to the second person saying that you can't drive. And I thought, are you kidding me? Now it's been 3 months before you finally or have your license taken away. But he didn't know that. So it wasn't until about 3 days before his license were going to be void that he found the letter, which I should have thrown away. And if you have the feeling that you should throw something away, throw it away, because that was a big mistake that I made. And it was quite an experience to go through those 3 days before it was, finally finalized. But when he found the letter, it just said he had until a certain date before his license would be taken away. And he didn't read the part because he was having trouble reading and understanding at that point. And so he didn't read the part about the attorney, which I was very thankful for, or he would have wanted to gone and got an attorney. So, it's quite a process. People would think, oh, the doctor turns in the note to the Department of Motor Vehicles and says this person shouldn't drive. No, it takes 3 months before the final process. So it's kind of sad. I did write him a letter and told him, what are you thinking?
Well, yeah, they're making it more difficult. And, most people with dementia, struggle a lot of times to pay their bills. They don't have this extra money to be appealing and getting attorneys and, doing all it takes to process something like that. And then they don't understand the mood swings that you're dealing with at home. And now you're the bad guy again. And it was like, I thought this was supposed to take it off of me so I could care without this extra stress and this extra friction. And now you've thrown it back on us again. And there's those processes between the doctors and the driving. There's a lot of work, I think, that still needs to be done. And every state's a little bit different, because they got to make it more confusing with all of that as well with that. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was usually what I hear from most authors is that there's a trigger point. Like when people are journaling, they don't really plan necessarily on writing a book. It just kind of happens or something triggers this thought. Or was your plan to always write on this topic?
No, I've just, like I said, I've always taken journaled, like I journaled when we were truck driving. And in the back of my mind, I've always thought about writing a book, but I wasn't actually thinking about it when I was going through the dementia part. It wasn't until he passed that I thought, I enjoyed all the books so much, and they helped me so much. I got so many different ideas. And then the support groups that I had, they would say, put this in your toolbox, put this in your toolbox. And so I actually started a list of things that I used with him. Robotic cats, an MP3 player that was easy to use where all he had to do was lift the lid and close it back down, the tracking devices and all these other things that I used in my toolbox to help him and to help me, because I thought, that would be good to have in one place in a book. And, I had gathered that information and written it down. So I thought, maybe this is what I should do. Maybe I really should try to write this book. So I'm 74 years old. That was my first book. And then I've gotten into a writer's group since he passed, and I really enjoy the people there. And many of the people in that group have published books. And so that was a great help to me toward, getting it published. And I found a publisher, and I found a person to print the book. I self-published, but I got an editor and I had edited it some, but I got her to finish it, and a book designer, because I wasn't good at designing, the cover of the book. And so that was very helpful to me.
Good. Now we should mention the name of the book. I believe it's Our Dementia Journey and Beyond. Is that correct?
And Beyond, yeah. And I put the Beyond in there because so many books are written about the dementia journey, but they don't say what happens to the person afterward. And you go through all the grief during the dementia, but then afterward, like I said, it's a different kind, because then they're gone. And so I thought that was very important to show how I started trying to find the new me afterwards. And I went to support groups there, and there is a very good support group that I highly recommend that's nationwide. It's called Grief Share. And all you have to do is put the words griefshare.com into your computer, and then it will pop up for you to put in your zip code. And when you put your zip code in, then it pops up all the classes that are being given in your area. Okay. And they're usually either at churches or community centers, different places, but it is a religious program, tends to turn that way. But it's good for everybody. They show a video, and then you discuss the video, and they have a workbook that you can write in each week. And it's 13 weeks long. And what I did is I went through it. And then after the 13 weeks, I waited, 6 more weeks or 2 months, and I decided to go through it again. And I didn't look back at my old workbook that I had done, and I didn't go back to the same group, because there were several groups in Olympia, Washington, is where I live, and there were several groups there. And so I went to a different group, went through it again for the 13 weeks, and kept the workbook. And then I compared the 2 workbooks, and I could see how I had made growth. And so that was very encouraging to me. So that's why I put the beyond in there, is that to kind of give people the hope that there is, there is a way. If you look for the support groups, just like you were going through dementia, it's so important to find a grief support group. And then there were also support groups that were non-denominational, that were not religious, at the senior center, and that gave me a lot of good information from that. So if a person wanted to do that, usually through the senior centers, you can find one too. And also the senior centers provided, like you were talking about, the Memory Cafe, they provided a program for people with that were under caregiving through Zoom. And I did get my husband to attend those, and they did some really neat things over that, probably similar to the Memory Cafe.
Okay. Well, I know when I was kind of surveying we had several different Memory Cafe groups, and we would have people, where their loved one would pass, and then it was like, now what? And our Memory Cafes always let them stay. But many of them said that they wanted a grief support group, but they really hated the 8, 9 weeks, 13 weeks, because they're like, I'm not going to be over this quick. I need more support. So then we created a caregiver reentry program, is what we called it, for dementia. And initially we were going to have it for people who were at the end stage, and then we had it for people who had actually passed. And what we found was it really was meant for the people who had a loved one pass, because the needs were so different. And things that we heard were, a lot of people who haven't been through this would think they're really silly, but what's in fashion? I don't even know. I haven't bought clothes in 10 years. I haven't done my hair. I don't know what's in or what's out. My friends, I'm not close to them anymore. We grew apart because I couldn't go out and I couldn't do things. And so it really was this kind of exploration of who am I now, like you mentioned. And they really liked being able to have it be fluid, like a Memory Cafe. So it could cover different topics. They talked about, when do you get rid of the clothes? Should I sell the house? How do I find people like me to socialize with? Where the heck are they? Because things have changed. Some wanted to start dating, and they're like, an app? What's an app? It was just, there were so many things that were so foreign. And so it was nice for them to be able to share and not be judged, but hear from others how they were dealing or not dealing with certain things. So that's a really important part of the journey. So I'm glad that you included that in there, for sure. Were there some other things in your Beyond portion other than support groups that you have listed in there as well?
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Well, I, like a lot of people, you are angry because why did this have to happen to my husband? You know, why would this happen? I mean, we had all of our retirement to go through. And so I was angry at him, angry at God. And I think that there was a lot of things because of my faith that I did not really, wasn't looking at it the right way. And I was able to have different things that happened that showed me that, you know, I don't have to be angry, that this was an answer, because God's answer is not always yes when you say, you know, would you heal him from this? It's no. And I think one big thing that impressed on me was it was no, because maybe I needed to write this book and I needed to have other people be able to relate to it. And so, you know, he's whole again in my belief in heaven, and he's at peace. And so even though it's not where I want him to be, I want him to be with me, there was a reason. And the answer was, you know, was no for a reason, because I needed to write this book. I needed to be able to help people. And through all this process, I'm able to deal with my grief. And now I'm able to, I decided back in January of 2024 that I was going to find the new me. I had gained a lot of weight through, you know, eating comfort foods like a lot of people do. So I concentrated on my health and exercise. I lost about 20 pounds, and I started dancing, which is something I had never done. Even as, you know, growing up, I got the school dances, but I never had any formal training. So I started taking dance lessons, which was totally new for me. And I met a whole dance community out there that I didn't know about, and I made new friends. And so it was people that, you know, they heard my story, and some of them have read my book, but they didn't know my husband. And it was just starting something new for me. So it was the new me. And now I dance 5 or 6 days a week. It's good exercise. I have met some very nice people, and I have gone on a few dates now. It's been 3 years and 10 months. And I'm starting to enjoy doing that, going out and being with other. I found a lot of widows go to the dances, and so or divorced people too, which have their own section of things they're dealing with. But I've met other people, and it really has helped me to get out of the house and not just dwell on my sorrow and my grief, but to look forward to the next day and something new happening. So, plus it's good exercise, and then I'm eating healthier, and it really helped.
Well, that's good that, you know, because so often the self-care slips. I know I'm not really good at that when I'm in the caring mode. And, you know, I just lost my ex-husband who I was caring for. He and his wife, who has dementia, who I'll still be caring for. But it's you lose track of time of day. And I love that you started a new hobby. You learn something new, you meet new people. Now you have something in common where you're not just at the grocery store squeezing melons trying to run into somebody,
Right.
and things.
Yeah.
You just don't know where you're going to meet somebody. And I don't know, for me, I don't think people are as friendly in public as they used to be back in the day. I'm 66. I know you said you're 74. And, back in the day, you would just go to the store and people would talk. They would smile when you'd walk by. They'd say hi. And I don't think things are that easy anymore.
Yeah.
People divert from one another or even go to the other side of the street and walk. And I mean, there's just, it's very different out there from what it used to be. And I hear that from many people. Well, I'm going to take just a quick break here. We have been talking with Mary Jo Belmont about her journey with her husband, Jack, and the book she wrote called Our Dementia Journey and Beyond. And, it's in all the major bookstores where you can find it. And you can also email her at ourdementiajourneyandbeyond@gmail.com. Are you on like Facebook and things as well, Mary Jo?
I'm on there personally,
Okay.
but not on there with my book. But Amazon is the really best place to buy it. It's the cheapest
Okay.
place to buy it. But yeah.
Okay.
But I just, as you were talking, thought too, in the Beyond, if there's so many places things that you can get involved with, like I did dancing, but my church had a connections group, which is for women who live alone. So a lot of places have that. A lot of single groups. I belong to a puzzle group, a card making group. So if you look for them, there are small groups out there that you can get involved with that are friendly. So
Yeah. Volunteer groups where you can, visit other seniors or, donating your time maybe to the Humane Society. I mean, it's endless.
Right.
It could be somebody in your own neighborhood just needs some help with something, So there's not a shortage of what we can do. It's just being able to get focused and having the confidence to step into it and try it, I think sometimes holds people back. I do want to give a shout out to my webmasters. I just adore them, and they're called Q for Good. And if you're looking for somebody, I don't get anything for this, so it's not that. I just love talking about things that I think can help other people. And I know websites are things that can cause a lot of frustration and a lot of grief and can be really expensive as well. And I have found Q for Good to be really reasonable. And if you mention my name or Alzheimer Speaks, you can get 10% off. And of course, they would do a free consultation to kind of see what your needs are first. So I always just like to give them a little shout out there on that. Let's get back to asking Mary Jo, you a few more questions. Can you give us an example from your book, how you lived in Jack's world with dementia? Everyone says live in their world. And a lot of people are like, well, what the heck does that mean? Give me an example or two of what you mean by that.
Well, the one that comes to my mind the best is that I went to the post office one day and he wanted to go into the store that was right next to the post office, which was a store that sold picture frames. And I said, sure, go on in there. And so he went in, and when I came back out, he came out with a big bag and he had 3 different picture frames. And I said, oh, you bought some picture frames. What are you going to put in the picture frames? He goes, I don't have to. That was an art store. He said, the pictures are already in the frames. Well, you know how they have a picture in the frame before you put your picture in, and it has, 11 by 14 or whatever written on the bottom. But the pictures one was of a mountain, which he loves the mountains here in the Northwest. And the other one was of a little boy looking across to West Seattle to the to see the city. And he said, look, this looks just like our grandson. He goes, this is a beautiful picture. And then another one was of a bridge in Tacoma where he went scuba diving. He goes, and this is where I went scuba diving. Look, they have a beautiful picture of it. And I said, well, that's really wonderful. And so he says, I'm going to put them up in our condo, and because we have a condo in Seattle. And so we put the pictures up on the wall, and then people would come and he would say, oh, this is, and explain it to them, and they're looking at me like, what? But then they were very good. I said, just go with him and live in his world. And so we enjoyed those picture frames on our wall as real pictures. And so that was sort of like living in his world. He had a lot of hallucinations. And so instead of arguing, because those are real to them. And so you're not going to tell them that's not real. You might as well go ahead and live in their world with those hallucinations. So he was hallucinating about animals a lot. And he goes, it's okay for all these cats and dogs to be running around the house. He goes, but that horse in that kitchen, if it goes to the bathroom, we're going to have a mess, Mary Jo. We've got to get it out of here. I said, okay, I'll open the door and you get behind it and shoo it out the door so it makes sure that it goes out. He goes, okay. So he's over there just shooing this horse. And I said, did it go out? And he goes, yeah, I see it running up the driveway. I said, okay, good. I said, maybe it won't come back. He says, I can't figure out how it got in here. How do you think it got in? I said, I don't know. And so you just live in their world. So those are kind of two examples that.
Those are great examples. Yeah. Those are absolutely great examples. And how gracious you can be and how simple it can really be versus, no, there's not a horse in the kitchen, Jack, knock it off, see, there's nothing here. Look I'm walking all over. And so often people step into that, or they would be embarrassed by the sample pictures in the frames. But you just saw that he had great pleasure and pride in those photos. And why take that away,
Right.
And you gave him the control of shoeing the horse. All you had to do was open up the door.
That's right.
And make sure he was out before you shut it.
Right.
So I think sometimes people don't understand how frustrating it would have to be for them for us to argue all the time when they can't see our side of view at all. And I think if people really think about how that would make them feel if they were treated like that, if they weren't validated for what they thought was reality, and then we wonder why they get mad and agitated and upset with us. I mean, we would do that if somebody, wasn't validating our point, of view in a conversation or whatever. We wouldn't want to have anything to do with them in the future if that continued. And, that happens with dementia as well.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but I know it's some of the big dementia conferences and different things, but I was never able to go to those. But I did go on YouTube or on the internet and was able to find it. But they have a virtual reality of what it's like to live in dementia. Have you heard of those?
Oh, yep.
Anyway, if you haven't heard of it, it really helped me to go on YouTube, and they had a video on there of what the people did. They put on glasses that caused them to have, their vision. They had earphones on because they could only hear every fourth word, because dementia people miss every fourth word, or a lot of them do, and then all the other things that they're feeling. They put on gloves, they put on bulky shoes, and so then they gave them a task to do. And so what it was like to try to live in the world they're living in, we don't understand, and it kind of helped you have more of a feeling as to what they were dealing with that. But since I mentioned the fourth word, that's something that was really important. In fact, people that read my book say that's one of the most important things that they get from that, and they didn't realize that happened. But I know it did with Jack. He missed every fourth word, which made it very hard for him to understand what you were trying to tell him, because our grandkids were coming over, and my daughter, and I was trying to get dinner and everything ready, and he came in the kitchen. He said, "Can I help?" And I said, "Sure. Get out the plates." Well, plates was the fourth word. So he heard get out the. And so he started getting out bowls and putting them on the table. And then he looked at me. He goes, "This is not right, is it?" And I said, "No, I wanted plates." Well, plates is still the last word. So he heard, "No, I wanted." And he looked at me. He said, "Honey, I have no idea what you want me to do." And then it hit me, because I know that, but when you're talking, you don't count your words. And I went, "Oh, plates was the fourth word in each one of those sentences." So I said, "Plates, please." And he goes, "Oh, you want plates? Okay." And he started getting the plates out. And he says, "Do you still want the bowls?" I said, "Yes, for salad." And he goes, "Okay, we'll have it for salad." And he was just so happy and that he could help me. But, if you don't, you're like, "Well, I told you to get out the plates, But they didn't hear it. So that happened many times when I was working with him, and he would give me that. When he'd give me that funny look, I would, "Oh, wait a minute. The fourth word was the important word." And so that's something that's, I feel I've passed on to a lot of people, that really helps them with their loved one understanding why they're not doing what they want them to do, because they don't hear it. It's the fourth word.
Very true. And I want to go back to the virtual dementia tours. There's a few different ones out there, and a lot of communities now have license for those, and they'll do community programs on those as well. And I went to one of them 3 times at different conferences. And so the third one, I knew exactly what to expect. I knew that I was going to get glasses. I knew I was going to have headphones with jarbled noise. I knew they were going to give me multiple instructions to do. I knew the setup, and they always kind of do a debrief. And I'm like, "Oh, no, I'm fine. I get it. I've been through it. I understand it." I did, when the siren came on, I did jump. That did startle me, and a lot of times people don't understand how different sounds will startle people, and it just throws them off track. Or when we're giving multiple directions instead of one step at a time, how confusing that could be. Or when the lighting is dimmer, because as we age, we need more light. There's just so many variables with all this stuff. And so I left the room, and I got all the way up to my hotel room, and I forgot my purse. I was disoriented. I went running back down to the room, hoping they were still there, because my purse with my phone and everything, my briefcase was still down there. And I just had to giggle, because it's like, okay, I'm a professional who deals with this all the time. I thought I knew, and I wasn't all there when I left. Even though I thought I was saying the right things, but I really was still missing things, because it is very disorienting. And so, it's really paying attention and listening and watching and being okay, saying, "Gosh, that was confusing for me." I can see how somebody can get really irritated with me when I'm giving directions the way I'm giving them, or if it's the fourth word, or if it's just breaking things down into a piece at a time. so that they can still process things. I did want to ask you about your faith in Jesus. You had mentioned, that you're a very faithful person. Do you give examples in your book of how your faith helped you as a caregiver or a care partner?
I saw God working that. I mean, I know it's not coincidence. At least I didn't think it was coincidence. One example was, and this is the one that my friend Linda, this is her favorite. It's the a ring story, I call it. My husband lost his wedding ring right before our 50th wedding anniversary, and he and a friend had been working in our in a well shed across the road. So we looked all around it, looked all through the friend's truck and everywhere. We could not find this ring. They were insulating the building. And so then I bought him another ring because I told him, well, you bought me a 50th wedding ring. We'll go buy you one. And then in my book, that's a whole story of trying to take a person with dementia in to buy a new ring. But anyway, so then after he passed, it was the day of his memorial service. And we were getting ready, getting everything together to leave to go to the service. And we had a knock on the door. And it was the water doctor that had been over servicing the water filters. And he said, I opened the door to the well shed this morning, and there was a ring laying right there on the floor. And I said, what? And he showed it to me. I said, that's my husband's ring. I said, what do you mean it was laying on the floor? We looked everywhere for that ring. He goes, I opened the door and there was a wedding ring laying there. And I said, I can't believe this. And so it was sort of like, how did that ring get there? I have one friend that, she's not really a believer. She thinks everything has a reason. She said, well, I think a little mouse drug that ring out and left it on that floor. I said, well, if it did, God let that little mouse drag that ring out on the day of my memorial service and brought that ring back to me to show me that God, that he was safe in heaven and that I could go to this memorial service and that I was going to be comforted, and here was the ring to comfort me. And so I took my rings off and I put his ring on and put my rings back over the top so it wouldn't slip off, and I wore his wedding ring to his memorial service. And it was just a real comfort to me, and I felt like that was how the Lord really comforted me to go to his service. And I wasn't going to say anything in the service, and I was sitting there, and when I have this really strong feeling that I need to do something, then I have to do it because I feel like it's the Lord speaking to me. And so I got up and I said, well, usually the widow doesn't say anything at the memorial services, but I have to tell you the story. And I told them the ring story, and everyone said, oh, that was the best part of the whole memorial service. Even my friend that said the little mouse drug out the ring. Yeah. But that's a lot of people's favorite. One of my favorites was we had a house in Kauai, and we needed to sell it. So before we flew over, I had convinced my husband that we were going to sell the house, and we had written down that we were going to sell it on a piece of paper. And we got over there, and the realtor came to the house. Before we went over, I had called the moving company, and I asked them if they could come pack everything up. And they said, no, we're booked out for 3 months. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? And so when we got there, I said, let's go to the moving company first and see if they might have by chance, a way they could come pack our stuff up. And so when we went in, she just got through talking on the phone, and she hung up the phone, and she goes, oh, you're the girl that called and was so desperate to have her stuff packed up. She goes, I just got a phone call, and a lady canceled her packing for tomorrow, so we can come to your house and pack up your stuff. And I thought, that's not a coincidence. That was God taking care of me. And so they did come, and then the realtor came, and she explained the sale of the house, and she said, I need you to sign the papers. And Jack goes, well, I've decided I'm not going to sign them. I'll give you a key and you can try to sell the house. And then when you get the house sold, then I'll sign the papers. And she goes, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Belmont, but it doesn't work that way. You have to sign the papers before I can sell the house. And he was not going to do it, even when I showed him the paper we had talked about before. So she said, she was a Christian lady, and she said, well, could we have prayer before I leave? And she said, I'm not trying to pressure you or anything like that. She said, you can take your time on signing the papers whenever. She said, but I can't sell it unless you sign them. And so she had prayer with us before she left. And when Jack and I when he opened his eyes, he goes, I've been thinking about it. And he goes, Mary Jo really wants to sell this. She usually does things right. I think I am going to sign that paper. And he picked up his pen and signed the paper. And so it was just, I don't know whether the prayer moved it on him or him just deciding or whatever, but it it saved the day. So God knew how to work things out. So those are two examples of how I feel like it really was present in my life during that time.
Wow. When my ex just, like I said, passed away, and I'm a firm believer that, God moves in very mysterious ways. We got back from the hospital, and my daughter pulled in the driveway, and she was just sitting out in the car crying. And she said all of a sudden her phone pinged her. And on it was an old message from her dad. I'm going to cry. And it said, honey, I made it home safe. You don't have to worry.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, he's in heaven and he's fine. It was just it gave her so much comfort though, and there have been so many things like that happening. We have a little granddaughter who is very, very connected to him as well. And it was a few days after he had passed, and she's 2, and she's looking up at the sky, and a plane went by, and she goes, plane, and she's pointing her finger, and she's passing the plane. And then the plane, leaves the airspace, and then all of a sudden she points up and she goes, pop, pop, up, pop. And she's like seeing Papa up in the sky, and I know a lot of little kids are very intuitive and can see things like that. And she's just so connected with him and was the whole time he was ill. So I think if your mind and your heart is open to that connection, you'll be shocked at how many little things will just appear magically and how much comfort it gives you.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing, the comfort that you can receive. That sometimes I think some people get so deep in their grief, and I'm not trying to minimize that by any stretch, but I know for me, when I lost my mom with dementia and my dad with brain cancer, I would always tell myself, and I don't know where I got this from. I think it was just because I hurt so bad. And I think it was something that God sent to me to comfort me. And it was, basically the phrase, how lucky you are to hurt so bad, to have loved so deeply. And it's just like, and that would help kind of pull me out of that spiral down of being grateful to have loved so deeply, to hurt so bad, because so many people never have that depth of love and connection.
That's true.
And that can be so, so beautiful. Now, you also have a section in your book called My Toolbox for Caregivers, and we talked about support groups. Are there other types of tools that you found that you've listed in there for people?
There was, like I had briefly mentioned about a music box. I happen to have this box right here. This is the MP3. It's made like an MP3 player, and you just connect with the HMI cord, and you download the music. And he loved trucking songs, and so all he had to do was lift this lid, and it would start playing. And if he didn't like it, then he would press the button.
Hello? I'm a truck.
And then we go to the next one. And then when he was done with it, he could shut it. It's made especially for Alzheimer's patients before. I don't know if you've ever seen one or not, but they sell them at the Alzheimer's store. They also sell them on Amazon. And it's PL, music player is the name of it.
Okay.
And it's just excellent because he could not work dials or a lot of buttons and things, but he could lift this lid and then punch the button if he didn't like the song and go and shut it off by closing it. And he used this all the time, just all the time. That was something that was very, very special.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
And I know you had mentioned like the robotic cats, and they have the robotic dogs as well.
Yeah, they have cats, dogs, and birds. And when you pet them, they meow and then they purr. They lick their paws and roll over and things. And he really thought it was a real cat because you don't give it to them in a box and have them open it. A cat doesn't come out of the box. They know that. But we just left it on the couch, and he found it, and he said, oh, because he was seeing cats and dogs running around the house. He goes, where'd that cat come from? And I said, well, that's our cat. But it's kind of funny because it doesn't get up and walk around. It doesn't go to the bathroom. We don't feed it. You can just hold it. And he goes, well, that's a good kind of cat. And I said, yeah, it is. And so he really loved the cat, and it helped me in that I kept the meow turned off because it would drive you nuts if it was meowing all the time. But it would purr, and that didn't bother me hearing that sound. But I used it because when he would start to do something that I couldn't get him to stop, like one day when he got further into dementia, he had taken some money out of his wallet and he was cutting up $1 bills with scissors. And so I was trying to get him to stop cutting the money up, and I couldn't. He said, I got to get this paperwork done. Leave me alone. I've got to find some more papers. And I'm like, okay. So I went and turned the cat on, and the cat was meowing. And I said, your cat is meowing. He goes, really? She doesn't meow very often. I got to go check on my cat. So then it got him distracted. So I used it for a distraction when he was doing things like that I wanted to get him to stop, and I couldn't. And then there's like the hand over hand. I'm sure you've heard of hand over hand helpful movements. When he got where he didn't know how to eat, I put a bowl of cereal in front of me. He goes, well, what am I supposed to do with it? And I said, well, here, put this spoon in your hand. And I took my hand and I helped him start to put the food in his mouth. And then once he got that motion going, then I could turn loose and he could do it on his own. But a lot of times I would do something like that for brushing his teeth or whatever. The hand over hand movement was really good. Trackers, I had trackers on all of our keys because he still would go up across the road from our house to go in cabins and go. He still drove. He drove his tractor and his bulldozer up on the hill through the trails because he didn't have to have a license there. So he would constantly be losing keys. He would lose his glasses. So there was a small tracker that you could buy that was just glued onto the side of your glasses. And we used those. There was a tracker that you could put in his wallet that was the size of a credit card. And once we found his wallet behind the bookshelf, behind a whole bunch of books, because you could just, on your phone, you had an app and you could just hit that app and then it would make the card or the little tracker start beeping and then you could find it. And so the trackers were amazing. And let's see, I had LED lights in the toilets. I don't know if you've heard of those or not, but you could buy them off of Amazon. And you just put them in the toilet and it lights the toilet up. In fact, I kept them after he passed because my grandchildren love seeing different lights in the toilet. But it helped him find the toilet and be able to go because he couldn't find the toilet sometimes.
Sure.
And so that was really a big help for him. And then there were 40, I don't know if these really worked, but he said it made him feel better. 40 gigahertz gamma light therapy. And I ordered it off of Amazon. And these lights would flicker at 40 gigahertz a second. And then there's also, if you go on Amazon Music or some other music stations, you can put in Alzheimer's music, and that music has a beat of 40 kilohertz a second. And so for 15 minutes a night before he went to sleep, I would put the lights on and the music on, and it's supposed to break up the plaque and tangles in the brain. I don't know. I know that it calmed him down before he would go to sleep. And if I would forget, he'd say, "Aren't we going to watch the lights and the music?" And so I would always then try to get the lights and the music for him before he went to sleep. And then toward the end, when he wasn't taking his phone, so I couldn't track him, or he would leave his billfold at home, I had a scent jar out of harm's way, and you can buy those too, and just wipe down his body with a cloth, so that way if he did get lost or I couldn't find him, and I had to call the tracking police dogs or whatever, they have the dogs there, they could come and they could find him from that scent. And they told me that cloth that you put in that jar would last up to 5 years.
Wow.
So, it's better to wipe them down sooner than later, and then you just label it. And I put it on top of the refrigerator so I would know where it was. And it's called Out of Harm's Way, or scent jars for finding. And you could even use that with children if you had a child that might run away or walk away or whatever. Anyway, and then movies and books. My favorite movie was Robin Williams' the movie Robin's Wish. And it really was a great help as far as understanding about, dementia. And I've heard, I don't know whether it's true, that they are using that for some training for doctors and different things like that on Lewy body and how it works. So those were the things that I did.
Wow, those are all super, super helpful. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a really interesting conversation. You've given us a lot of good tips and resources. And, I just think it's so nice to hear from someone who's actually experienced the disease. To me, I hear people just clamoring for that. They want to know the diagnosis, but once you see an MRI or you get the definitions, they want to know, how do I live with it? Okay, now I know what it is. Now, how do we live well with this? What do we do? And I think so often that piece is missing. And that's not just for the families, but it's for the doctors too, because when they just relay the statistical stuff, they don't understand it's not really supporting families. Families really need this, in the trenches, survival techniques. Where do I get support? Where do I look? How do I ask for things? Where do I search? Is it okay to try something new? Because people are scared to try something new too, if their doctors haven't mentioned it. And, I hear repeatedly from families nowadays is, they're just bringing resources back to the doctors because they just feel like 99% of the doctors don't have the knowledge base that they need to help the families. And I love that they're doing that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I do have to say that Mayo Clinic was really, really important. We went to the one in Jacksonville. There's 2 others around the country, but that's the one we went to. They had a whole week. You have to get your doctor's referral. You have to get to the right people. It took me a lot of paperwork to get into it. But they have a 2-week program for MCI, mild cognitive impairment. If you've been diagnosed with that, then you can go through this 2-week course where they have, you're with a psychologist for an hour. They teach you brain games. There are a lot of good brain games out there on your computers that will help, stimulate people, puzzles, things like that. They had research people come in and talk to us about the research that was being done. We had where he was in a group with all the people that had the MCI. I was in a group with all the caregivers, and we had discussion groups, and it lasted for 2 weeks, 8 hours a day. And you do have to apply for it. My insurance covered a large amount of it, but I did have to put out some of the money for, some of the materials that we used and stuff. But the insurance did check in on that. So it was a great help. And then we went back and he had a diagnosis at the University of Washington, UW, University of Washington Medical Center. That's where he got the first diagnosis. But the one that Mayo did a year later, it was more thorough. Jack would tell everybody we went through 19 different tests. Anyway, but they took some fluid from his spine, which I didn't know this test even existed. They took some fluid from his spine and put it into a test, and depending on how much Alzheimer's he had, it would show on a graph. And he was just barely over the line. So he did have some Alzheimer's, but not a lot. And then through his behavior and testing different other things, they determined that it was majorly Lewy body. And then the brain scans that they did showed the black dots that were small strokes in his brain. So we compared the one that he had done. Actually, it was 2 years ago, and then the one he had 2 years later, and how much more there was there. So that confirmed that. But I really appreciated all the people that we worked with there, the psychologist and the psychiatrist and the people that were the medical team that was there that worked with us. They did an excellent job.
When I heard they go over like meditation and nutrition and all the lifestyle things, and I've heard really, really good things about that 2 week.
Yeah. If you can get into that, if you're just starting the journey and it's been diagnosed with MCI, look into it. Call the clinic there and see if you can get into that program. It was well worth our time to do that. It gave me a good base to start on, and they told us 50% of the people that are diagnosed with MCI go on into dementia. So, and I knew ahead of time that probably he would, because he already had that brain scan done, and just simply from the things that he was doing, I knew it probably was in our future. So, but that was a big help.
Well, good. Again, people, I always ask you to be a giver of hope. So like, click, and share, this episode. It costs you nothing. It takes you very little time to share it in your own groups and your own spheres, because you never know who in your group is struggling and hasn't even mentioned it before. Again, you can go to Amazon or any bookstore or library or Ingram and purchase Mary Jo Belmont's book called Our Dementia Journey and Beyond. And you can also reach out to her by email at ourdementia.
Attention seniors. Are you looking for a community that offers incredible benefits and stands up for your values? Look no further than AMAC. With an AMAC membership, you'll enjoy exclusive discounts on insurance, travel, dining, and shopping. Stay informed with 6 issues a year of our award-winning AMAC magazine, delivering trusted news and valuable insights. But that's not all. AMAC is committed to defending America's future by directly bringing the voices of our more than 2 million members to our elected officials. Join a community that cares about your needs and your values. For a limited time, we're offering a 1-year membership for only $1. Yes, just $1 for a year of incredible benefits and advocacy. Don't wait. Take advantage of this special offer and join AMAC today. Visit amac.us/join now. That's amac.us/join now.
Journey and Beyond at gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. And I appreciate you being part of our community, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.